This is Peter.
And this is Tom.
And you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. Tommy, what do we got today?
Today we're going to be exploring the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So talking about those a little bit, giving kind of a rundown, kind of like a traveler's list of where to go if you were alive during the antiquity era.
And I think we're going to touch upon some of the new 7. I feel like we should talk about the new 7 because there are 7 new wonders of the world, fairly recent in the 2000s. And the reason for it, well, I guess we'll get to it a little bit today, is the original 7 wonders of the world are kind of classical antiquity. Like these things are mostly located in the Mediterranean Rim, and there's reasons for that because they were recorded by travelers to the Mediterranean area. Most of these things are actually gone out of the 7, Tom, right? There's only one that survives. And then, and therefore, later on, there was a new push to find the new 7 wonders of the world. And therefore, it was like 100 million people voted in 2007 to declare these 7 new wonders of the world, which we will also briefly discuss. Maybe we'll compare the old with the new, although, not that anybody has seen the old, but okay, we'll describe them. Real quick. So the 7 wonders of the world were essentially written and put together in 225 BC. That's the original list that was put together. The list is gone. We can't really find it. Again, it's been thousands of years. However, it is referenced numerous times, and therefore from the references we have recreated this idea, historians have recreated this idea of what these 7 wonders of the world were.
Using modern day countries, 2 of them would be located in Greece, right? 2 in Turkey, 2 in Egypt, and 1 is in modern day Iraq. And they're basically, one reason why they exist is because if you go back to our archive, the one we did on Alexander the Great, right?
Yep.
Because he conquers the Hellenistic world. He conquers all these civilizations like the Egyptians, the Persians, the Babylonians, and then people can actually travel between these, I guess, relatively safely. Yep. And they're talking about the writings, and they become very popular, and they're talking about them, and they're listing them, and they're saying, listen, if you're going to go to this place, go here. If you're going to this place, go there. So it's almost like a traveler's guide. And the one that pops up first on all the lists is actually the oldest, and for a while it was the largest, tallest structure man ever built. And it's the only one that's still around today. And that is the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. And this is basically the only one, like we said, that's still around today. It's located in Giza on the west bank of the Nile River, just north of Cairo. And it's part of a series of 3 pyramids. Cheops Pyramid, the Chafri, I'm sure I'm saying these somewhat wrong, and the Mycermus. And they were built between 2700 BC and 2500 BC. And they're basically royal tombs. We know about this. Like we talked about this with King Tut. And the largest and the most impressive one is Khufu, which is the Great Pyramid. It's about 13 acres, and it contains more than 2 million stone blocks. So this is like a huge pyramid. And for a while, it was the largest man-made building in the world. For about 4,000 years, basically until you have the metropolises start to be built all over the place.
Yeah, they said it took the modern world to basically surpass the size and the height of these pyramids. It took that long. And also, interesting enough, each one of these blocks weighing about 30 tons each, it's so roughly about the same weight as an SUV. To this day, it really brings a lot of wonder, and that's kind of why these became the 7 wonders of the world. How were these built? I think this is still being debated to this day. And
it's aliens, right?
By whom? Aliens. I know, right? And that is one of the things. The aliens built the pyramids. Yeah, we did cover this on another podcast in the past. However, recently, as recent as about 5 years ago, archaeologists had found some tombs in the nearby site that they believe belonged to the builders of these pyramids. And again, these particular tombs they found are also well preserved, and each one had an area set to the side, in the side of it, for food and other provisions, as well as someone's belongings, which made it seem like the people that built them actually had a certain status. Therefore, it is believed that perhaps the long-running and long-standing belief that the slaves had built the pyramids may or may not necessarily be true. Again, this is a developing thing as archaeologists continue to discover these things. But also, the other thing was, how did they build them in a sense of how did they get them so high? So they created a bunch of, they
Like
used
rollers, log
rollers.
rollers, basically. Yeah,
Yep.
basically to move the stones in place,
And
slope
high planes.
walls.
Yep.
Yeah, high
Yep.
planes, and they were able to do it. And they've proven that you can do this. It's not easy. It's not easy work, but
Yep.
they've been able to. When I say they, I mean you have scientists, you have engineers that prove that no, you could do it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to you're not going to do it overnight, but it is possible.
Yep.
And
Yep.
on these
Yep.
pyramids, they found treasure. Obviously, we've talked about that when we talked about King Tut's tomb, but they didn't find much. They believe most of what was there was probably looted shortly after it was complete, about 100 years, 200 years after it was
Yep.
done. Most of the stuff was robbed by grave robbers and stuff like that, just because they just knew it was so valuable what was inside. And you're going to see that a lot with a lot of these ancient world wonders, is that they get looted, they get destroyed by
Yep.
just besides just time, just people wanting what's there because they're so valuable.
Absolutely. It's interesting because in the 80s, they actually did a whole scan of the pyramids trying to look for more hidden compartments. They did like a top-down, scan of it that looked like heat signatures to try to see if there's any open spaces because we're still to this day trying to really figure out the mystery of the one of the first seven wonders of the world. The second wonder of the world is actually considered by some to be a fictional tale because there's no
Yes, no
real
proof.
proof that this existed. However, considering that there is proof for the other six, there is a belief that this might have existed. And I'm talking about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, right?
Babylon, yes. Built near the Euphrates River, right? This is the one that was in modern
Yep.
day Iraq. And
Yep.
it was believed to be built by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II around 600 BC or so. And they're basically said to be built, well, I think, on a man made mountain, right? And the
Hmm.
gardens were, they had these high, they were planted about 75 feet in the air, huge square brick terraces laid out like steps in a theater. They built these towering gardens. It was supposed to be because his wife was homesick for the natural beauty of her home in Medea,
Yep.
which is in modern day Iran. So that basically he wanted to make her feel like she was at home. And when you're a king, you can do that. So these massive gardens, irrigated systems.
And
Scientists say,
that's what comes in to play,
yeah,
the
they said
irrigation,
they'd have to
right?
have an irrigation system because otherwise it would die. There's no way to have this. But there are talks of that there was this giant water wheel and stuff like that that carried water from Euphrates many feet into the air. And there's multiple accounts from both Greek and Roman literature that talk about people who've been there firsthand. So there might be
Yep.
some truth for it, and there might be some not. They're not really sure.
The idea of the irrigation system using the pumps and water wheels and all these things that carried water, many feet in the air, 75 feet into the air, they say that that's also often pointed to as the reason why this may not have been
Might have
true, because
happened.
the belief
Yeah,
is that they could not have carried that out during the time, around 600 BC, that was not yet perfected to the extent that it would have made this possible. So this is the only one here. As much as the Pyramid of Giza is the one real one that still survives of the seven, this is the one that is the most questioned that it might not have ever existed.
that's debated.
Um,
Yeah,
yep. That brings us to the statue of Zeus at Olympia.
yes, this one's cool.
It is, yeah. It seems like it was huge.
So I'm saying, yeah, Zeus, right? He's the main god, the god of gods, the god of the sky, thunder, lightning. If you saw him in
Yep.
lore in Thor: Love and Thunder, right? A little bit different in that movie, but
Yeah.
constructed and placed in a temple of Zeus at Olympia, and it was around the mid fifth century BC, and it was the god of thunder right there, seated, bare chested, wooden throne. He had a Artemis with two carved sphinx, which was a mythical creature, the head of a chest
Yep.
and of a woman, and body of a lion with wings. And his other hand, I think he had a spear, right? That had like an eagle on
Yep.
top, like a
Well, and it was
staff.
40 feet tall, the
40 feet
statue.
tall, and it was covered with gold, ivory, jewels. Like this was something that was supposedly impressive. But apparently, what I read too is a lot of people would come and be like, "Oh, the proportions aren't right. Zeus should
Yeah.
look different than this." Because remember, they're kind of making what their god looks like. This is him. So a lot of people actually they were in awe of it, but a lot of people also commented, be like, "This and that's not how Zeus looks." Again, how do you
Yep.
know what Zeus looks like? But
All
that's
right.
what basically was there.
Well, it
And then
was it was put inside a temple, right? Which has an interesting story too.
well, the temple shortly after it was constructed, it got struck by lightning.
Yep, that's what I.
So if
Yeah,
you're
that's what I read.
so the Greeks are like, oh man, that's a sign that Zeus likes it. You know, they thought that it was Zeus's approval that that's what happened, and it stood there for more than graced a temple for more than 8 centuries. You have Christian priests persuaded the Roman emperor to close it in fourth century. I still read something that what was that crazy the Roman emperor Caligula, but he wanted to basically take it himself and bring it bring it to Rome and replace the head with his head. They were talking about doing it, so apparently he sent a bunch of workers in, and as they were moving it, there was like this loud booming sound, which the workers took as a laugh, and like it knocked down the scaffolding and stuff like that. And then that's why they all like ran out. And then shortly after that, Caligula was assassinated, so it never happened. And a lot of people say that it was Zeus, his laughter. It was a warning that you should not mess with the gods. You don't mess with that. Caligula's assassination was a sign of that. You don't mess with the gods because you want to do that.
It's kind of
But it
cool.
eventually gets taken down, like we said.
Yeah, it is moved. It is moved to Constantinople, and it is believed to have been destroyed in Constantinople
Like
around
a
the year 462.
yeah, in a fire. And plus, a lot of the stuff was missing too by then. That people would come and take pieces off. They were taking their souvenirs basically one way or another.
Yep. This one apparently does more than one. The next seventh wonder of the world, the Temple of Artemis. And based on what I read about Temple of Artemis, they said it was actually a series of different altars and temples, and
All in
they
the
were
same place, though, right? In the same
yep,
place
they were
generally.
destroyed, rebuild, and continuously in a Greek port city on the west coast of modern day Turkey. Right.
Festus, yeah, Festus.
The most fabulous of these structures was apparently two marble temples that were built around 550 BC and 350 BC. It's a long time to build something. It's like 200
It takes
years.
time. Well,
Um,
they take their time. They want to make sure it's right.
right. Apparently, a writer at the time said that apart from Olympus, the sun never looked on anything so grand. It was decorated by some of the most celebrated artists at the time, apparently, but the building burned on July 21st, 356 BC, according to the legend. This is an interesting legend, right? That it
Yeah,
burned on the same night that Alexander the Great was born, and it was apparently torched by a Greek citizen named Herostratus, right? I think I'm saying that
yeah,
right.
Hero Stratus, yeah. But he had a weird reason why he wanted to do this, and I guess we're helping his reason right now, right?
Right? Yeah, no, this is kind of like the complex of John Wilkes Booth over here.
Yeah,
He burned it because he wanted his name to be known to history. However, he is found out, put to death, and basically the government, to make sure that this doesn't happen, makes it illegal for anyone to say his name at
yes,
the
they try
time.
to erase him from history, but here we are talking about it. So I guess the Greek government from 356 BC is going to come after us
Isn't that
because we
crazy though that
mentioned
how they're like, this
Herostratus.
happened on July 21st, 356 BC? Like,
BC,
that's
yeah, they have the
like
date. Yeah, well,
insane,
the
right?
Greeks were note takers. They paid attention to their history,
They didn't mess
and
around.
that's why the guy did that because he knew, hey, they're going to write my name down somewhere. It's going to get found out, and I will be remembered for all time. So we're not
Yeah.
condoning burning down temples in order to get your name remembered in history. It doesn't really work that way anymore. But
Crazy. Well, as before, the temple is rebuilt 6 years later, and inside of it stood they said a 60-foot marble columns held up a statue of Artemis, right, the Greek
yeah,
goddess of the hunt. They're not really sure what exactly the top of it looked like. We don't know if it was wood or not, but it was mostly destroyed in year 262, and it wasn't really until 1860s that archaeologists dug up the first ruins of the temple's columns at the bottom of the Cayster River, which is kind of cool. So again, technically that we found ruins, but it doesn't still exist. So pyramids are still the only ones.
yeah, that look as if someone as they did during that time. A lot the other ones like we know where it was. They can find the ruins like you said, but it doesn't. They don't exist anymore.
Yep, yep.
Same
All
thing.
right,
Same thing with what we have next.
all right. What do you got next?
Next on my list is the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus,
Yep.
right? And it was located in Turkey. And the Mausoleum was a tomb built by Artemisa for her husband. So the other
Hmm.
one, supposedly the hanging guards of Babylon, were for his wife, right? And this one's for the husband. He was the king of Carnea in Asia Minor, and he died in 353 BC.
This is
And he
kind of weird though.
was it was also Artemis's brother, according to legend.
Yep, yep,
So his name was Mausolus.
yep. That's how I would say it.
And according to legend, so she was very like grief stricken. She's upset at the passing that she mixed his ashes with water and drank them. And in addition to ordering the mausoleum's construction, so this is her brother and her husband that died. Remember, this is 353 BC,
Crazy.
and the mausoleum was made entirely of white marble. And it was they estimated it's probably about 135 feet high, and it was very complicated design. It had like 3 rectangular layers. Um,
They said it was different architectural styles, Egyptian, Greek,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Lycian,
Yep.
Greek, and Egyptian, all these styles, and The first layer was 60-foot base of steps, followed by a middle layer of like the columns, if you see it, and then a stepped pyramid shaped roof. So it was kind of like this merger of these cultures. And again, you can find like artist renditions of this and stuff like that. That's not what it looks like. It kind of looks like a combination, like they just like some kid's toys that stacked them on top of each other.
Yeah.
And the very top laid the tomb, decorated with work of four sculptures, a 20-foot marble rendition of a four-horse chariot. So this was like just marble and massiveness, this mausoleum for her husband slash brother. And most of it was destroyed in the 13th century by a earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
And what was later used, the remains were used to fortify a castle later on. And then in 1846, some of the piece of the mausoleum was extracted from the castle and now reside. They have other relics in London's British Museum. So it was taken all over the place. So they used it to rebuild the castle, and then now it's parts of that are in the British Museum in London. This is an interesting one too. Like you just look at the picture, and even just like the four-horse chariot on the top. Like this is a massive. It's a mausoleum. It's a tomb for her husband slash brother.
It's huge though, yeah. The next one is kind of interesting because we don't really know. To this day, they're trying to figure out what this thing looked like. Whether the one legend says that the legs of the statue were spread wide and the ships could pass through it into the harbor. And more recently, they're thinking, man, maybe not, because the statue, if it was real, was way too large, for it to balance that way. But what we're talking about is the Colossus of Rhodes.
Mm-hmm.
And the Colossus of Rhodes was an enormous bronze sculpture of the sun god Helios. It is built by the Rhodians over 12 years in the 3rd century BC. Apparently, they built it actually because Macedonians took over the area, and once the Macedonians left, the Rhodians actually used the leftover Macedonian tools and equipment to build and then pay for this Colossus structure. It was about 100 feet tall. They said it was the tallest of the ancient world.
Remember, this is bronze too.
Yeah, bronze. So this is not stone. This is bronze. It stood for 60 years. Was built around 280 BC, and it stood for 60 years until it was toppled in an earthquake and never rebuilt. Apparently, the humongous statue, again, it stood at supposedly entrance into a bay, and ships went under it. Eventually, after it fell, after this earthquake, the remnants of it were sold as scrap metal.
Yeah.
And we don't really know.
It was still there. It like fell onto the city, and supposedly it was a popular tourist attraction. Just like that, you'll see people just kind of like coming to the head, like because it fell into the city itself after the earthquake. It wasn't even around for like I think it said 60 years, right?
Yeah,
56, 60 years, and it topples over. And there's debates on whether or not he was naked or he had a torch with one hand or held a spear in the other. So it's a whole bunch of debates. But like you said before, they probably think that now there's no way you could have those legs that far apart. It just wouldn't be able to support the weight. They probably had to be much closer together. Maybe it was on one side of the harbor.
Yep.
But it was there to cement their victory over invading armies.
Yep. The last of the 7 is the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Small island near the city of Alexandria, Pharos, designed by a Greek architect around 270 BC. It supposedly helped guide the Nile River ships in and out of the city's busy harbor. And we know what this looked like because we actually, or rather not we, but archaeologists found ancient coins on which the lighthouse was depicted. So from that, we were able to deduce the structure had 3 tiers and more or less what it looked like, and the fact that it had a square level bottom. On top, very top of it stood a 16-foot statue. They think that it might have been of Alexander the Great because, after all, the city was named after.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Right. They say that the estimates of the lighthouse height, and again, I'm not sure how we could figure that out based off of a coin, but they say that lighthouse height range for anywhere from 200 to 600 feet.
Which is a really big estimate.
I was going to say, that's almost as bad as
like if we say, how big is that? 200 to 600 feet. Like, no, can you narrow it down a little bit? Like, that's it's a big difference between 200 to 600 feet. And I know a lot of scholars are arguing that it was probably about like a little under 400 feet and stuff like that. Basically, they used mirrors and stuff to reflect the light, and you said you could see it from miles out into the sea.
Yep. So those are basically your 7 ancient wonders of the world. The official 7 wonders of the world. When people say, "Hey, what are the 7 wonders?" Like, this is what they actually mean, not what we're about to quickly discuss. In 2007, there was a new foundation, a nonprofit created called the New 7 Wonders of the World Foundation, and they held a contest to name the new 7 wonders. And tens of millions of people voted for these different UNESCO World Heritage sites that made the list. and they span 4 continents, and all of them to this day attract thousands of different tourists each year. But we have the new seven wonders of the world. So, Tom, you want to kind of get into those a little bit?
The first one, sure. And then I guess
Well,
we'll wrap it up at
well,
the end, I guess, with
yeah,
some fun facts
yep,
on the old ones.
on the
So
other
the
one.
first one that's popping up on all the list is one that definitely everyone's heard of, the Great Wall of China, right? One
Yep.
of the world's largest buildings projects of all time. Right, the Great Wall of China is they don't really know for sure because it's apart about 5,500 miles long, and work began around 17th century BC and continued for 2 millennia, basically. It's called a wall. It's basically a bunch of parallel walls and lengthy stretches, in addition to watchtowers, barracks, things of that nature. The wall's just basically huge, and it was effective, right? Keeping the Mongols out of China.
They said they
And
started building it in sections in around 5th century BC, and they finished it by around 17th century. And it was built in sections because there was different warring like tribes and different dynasties that controlled various areas, and they would
the
build their
parts of
own
it,
little
yeah.
walls. And eventually, Ming dynasties, when they kind of connected most of these walls into the Great Wall of China. What's really cool about this Great Wall of China, it spans about 4,000 miles and makes it the world's longest man-made structure. Most of it is kind of messed up today. It's not as, when you see pictures of it, it doesn't really seem to be in that pristine
Yeah,
condition
yeah,
anywhere.
you're seeing like the more
Nicer
tourist
parts.
pictures, the
Yeah,
tourist
exactly.
pictures. The other parts, I think the wall's not very
Yeah, they
tall
said some
anymore at
pieces
all.
it's like gone. Yeah, and they also build the wall based on whatever materials were present in the place they were building it. So in some places it's really just wood, while in others it is what you normally see, which is
Yeah.
the blocks. What's interesting here too is they used. I found this really cool when I was doing research. I thought that was interesting. Is that they utilized rice inside the mortar, which is why the actual mortar was super sticky, and it allowed for the wall to pretty much remain intact to this day in many places because of this secret ingredient.
Yeah. It
It
also
also
helped the
made
workers, right? If they were hungry, they just take a couple bites.
of
It'd
the
be good.
mortar.
Yeah, why not?
Oh God! All right. So the second one that makes the new list is the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro. Everyone's seen this one. It looms over the
Yeah, it's
Brazilians,
kind of
right?
like a modern day Colossus. I actually forgot to mention that before. Is that the Colossus of the Colossus of Rhodes actually was the inspiration for the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, that's cool.
I saw that. But anyway, yeah. So we have Christ the Redeemer,
No, it's
Rio
good.
de
Yeah, this
Janeiro.
one, this was being built in the 20s, was completed in 31. It's 130 feet tall. It is reinforced concrete soapstone statue, and it costs approximately $250,000 to build. Which, if you think about it today, that's nothing in comparison to how much people's homes cost. But it was raised at the time mostly through donations. The next one is kind of cool on the new list is Machu Picchu. I found this one to be super interesting. So the
Well,
Machu
yeah, because no one knows really much about how it
yeah,
ends and stuff. But yeah,
but also like so it's they say that it was built at the peak of the Incan Empire in Peru in about mid 1400s. It was like a mountain citadel. And eventually, what's happening is when the Spanish are invading Peru and Latin America, the Incas abandoned this. But when they abandoned, this is up high in the mountains, the Andes, and it's so high, this hidden city, that when the Incas abandoned it, they actually on the way down start burning most of the forest to kind of hide the trek and the roads leading up to it from the Spanish. And believe it or not, they hide it so well that this site remains unknown except to some locals until 1911,
11. Yeah, and
which
then
is
yeah.
crazy. For hundreds of years, they hid this city up in the sky in the mountains.
It was
Um,
crazy. And so in 1911 is when they finally found it again. It just shows you how the world changes. In 2000, I'm sure you read that they were filming a beer commercial there. And that's when a
isn't that
crane fell down and cracked the monument. So they're like, yeah, we're not going to let this happen anymore. So it's
isn't that
like,
insane?
look at this ancient city we just found. And then like, not even 100 years later,
It was from a beer
it's going to be
commercial.
good to film some Budweiser here. Like
Crazy.
just crazy stuff. But yeah, but it's one of the few pre-Columbian ruins that were found actually like nearly intact. And even though it's isolated in the Andes Mountains, it has like agricultural terraces, plazas, residential areas, temples, and a lot of people think it might have been a retreat for royals, like kind of like their own like private,
Yeah,
like a city almost, where they would go and try to get away from it all.
crazy. The next one is in the Yukon Peninsula in Mexico, and it is the Mayan culture's ruins. How do you?
Chichen Itza,
Yep.
Mayan city.
Yeah, they said it was a powerful trade city, right? Center for cloth, slaves, honey, salt. Flourished from about 800 to 1200 and acted as the political and economic hub of the entire Mayan civilization. We should do a podcast on the Mayan civilization because that is,
We've talked about it. We've talked about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
because that would be cool.
And it has basically 365 steps, and they believe that, days in a solar year. Again,
Yep.
showing how the Mayans, how the astronomical signs and stuff are very important to them.
Yep. At the time. Um. So yeah, that one maybe we should go see that. We could make that trip. Go for it. All right. The next one, probably everyone that listens to this podcast have heard of this one, and that would be the Roman Colosseum.
Yeah, I think the
Um.
History Channel just did a special on the Colosseum
Yeah.
being built and everything like that. I watched a bit of it here and there. Yes, it was built in the first century by the order of Emperor Vespasian, and it was basically a feat of engineering. It was a giant amphitheater, right? 620 by 513
Yep.
feet. Features a complex series of vaults capable of holding over 50,000 spectators. Watched
Yep.
a whole bunch of events. Obviously, the most notable one with the gladiators. They had other things too. Had a series of like the floors were opening up, trap doors. Men would battle animals.
They
All
were
the stuff
filled
in
with
there.
water. Didn't they
They were
fill it with
filled with
water
water,
and
right?
put like
The
troops in
mock
there?
for mock naval battles and stuff like
Yep.
that. It's believed that Christians were martyred there, being thrown lines, but they're not really sure if that would happen. I'm sure that's kind of debated here and there. And then some estimates are that about 500,000 people died in the Colosseum over the centuries it was used in those gladiatorial battles.
Actually, it's still used as the main influence for even today's amphitheaters. 2,000 years later, they kind of still take cues from this one. It also did not look the way it looks outside now. It looked like
Well,
it
no, it's
had
fallen
fallen.
apart. Well, it fell
Yeah.
apart. Obviously, they reconstructed it, certain parts, or reinforced it, so make sure that it stays around because it's a major tourist attraction nowadays.
Taj Mahal is
The
the
Taj
sixth
Mahal.
on our list of seven. It was commissioned for the wife of
It's another.
Emperor
Yeah,
Shah Jahan,
it's
right?
another tomb, right?
It is another tomb. Built between 1632 and 1648, which is kind of amazing that it only took that little to build this thing. It's spectacular. They say it's considered the most perfect specimen of Muslim art in all of India. It is a white marble structure. You guys have also probably seen it, those of you guys that listen to this. It has Persian, Islamic, Turkish, Indian architectural styles. It's just a combination of all. And it has plethora of gardens and incorporates the gardens around it, formal gardens, raised pathways, flower beds, reflecting pool. Also, an extremely well visited site. I mean, all these are. All right. What else do we have?
We didn't do Peralta, the ancient city of Peralta, Jordan, right? It's
Yep.
located in a remote valley among the sandstone mountains and cliffs. It was supposedly to be one of the places where Moses struck a rock and water gushed out, if you read about that. Later Arab tribes made it their capital, and it flourished, becoming an important trade city, especially for spices and stuff like that. And they had these carvers, basically these chiseled dwellings into the rock itself. Temples, tombs, all in the sandstone, which changed color when the sun shifted on it, so that made it even more, I guess, beautiful, like to look at. They constructed a water system down there, lush gardens and farming. And at its height, they believe Peralta had a population of about 30,000. But as trade routes shifted, the city began to decline, and then a major earthquake in 363 caused more difficulty, and then another tremor in 551, and it was gradually basically just abandoned after that. Again, it goes kind of unnoticed until 1912, and it was largely ignored by archaeologists until late 20th century about like what's going on here. They kind of just like ignored it because of where it was.
Unbelievable.
But it's just no, it's just like rock, and then here's this city. It's really
It
like
looks
a
cool.
interesting to say.
It's almost like I think there is something from Indiana Jones, right? In the third Indiana Jones that like seems similar, where they
Yeah, I'm
go and
sure.
find the
Yeah, I think we
actual.
talked about that in our Indian Joe's
Yeah,
podcast.
we
Peralta.
did.
Touch on everything now, man.
See, it all connects. It all
All
connects.
connects.
Well, I think that pretty much concludes our podcast on the seven wonders of the world. So
Yeah, but go
everybody,
back and listen to our podcast on the eighth wonder of the world, right? Andre the Giant.
we
That
did
was
do
the
that
eighth.
one. We did
We
do
did
that
that
one.
one too. Look, I know it's like this episode has just become plugging for other episodes.
Well, we always find ourselves now like, hey, we should do this, and then we sit there and we're like, wait, this sounds familiar. We did do this one already.
We might have did this one already, yeah.
Yeah,
Trying to come up with new ones.
that's right. We're working on it. We're working on it.
Slowly but
Well,
surely.
thank you everybody for tuning in once more. We do appreciate it. If you need to find us, you can find us at www.historyteacherstalkingpodcast.com. We are there to answer any of your questions, and we welcome any comments that you might have. And I guess that's it. We'll see you guys next week. Enjoy.
Stay safe, everybody.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.
Warning, the following ZipRecruiter radio spot you are about to hear is going to be filled with F-words.
When you're hiring, we at ZipRecruiter know you can feel frustrated, forlorn even, like your efforts are futile, and you can spend a fortune trying to find fabulous people, only to get flooded with candidates who are just fine. Fortunately, ZipRecruiter figured out how to fix all that. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/zip. With ZipRecruiter, you can forget your frustrations because we find the right people for your roles fast, which is our absolute favorite F word. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day.
Fantastic.
So, whether you need to hire 4, 40, or 400 people, get ready to meet first-rate talent. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/zip to try ZipRecruiter for free. Don't forget, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip. Finally, that's ZipRecruiter.com/zip.